What's going on, 3DMJers? I'm back from my hiatus away from YouTube, and I'm back to start another series. This one isn't about any kind of pyramids, about nutrition, or any focus on any very cohesive topic. Rather, we're going to be discussing a number of topics under the title of Peeling Back a Layer. And the reason why I'm calling it Peeling Back a Layer is because these are all questions and topics that we feel like we know the answer to, but in reality, we often miss or make black and white the underlying concepts that result in these misconceptions. So we're going to be spending some time discussing some of the underlying root theories and really simplifying some of the things that we take for granted or misunderstand on a regular basis. So to kick it off, we're going to be asking the question, can we train for size? And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, I can train for strength, I can train for endurance, I can train for power, and of course I can train for size. It's just a matter of training the right way. Well, I would propose that we need to think about this a little bit differently, and we're going to start with the concept of functional adaptations. Let's go to the board. So, when I say functional adaptations, I'm referring to the fact that we are organic adaptation machines. We are only here today because as a species and as individuals, we were able to overcome and survive stresses to us. That means that all of our adaptations, whether that's muscular endurance, strength, being able to jump higher, run faster, etc., 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 solve complex problems, you name it, helped us survive. And I'll be honest with you, although it looks awesome, getting bigger biceps just doesn't cut it as a functional adaptation. So why is it that when we weight train, we can get bigger? Well, let's talk about some of the weight training that is functional. If we train and do an increased volume of work, and do more reps, and do, basically muscular endurance training, that will actually increase our size. Because to do more work, it requires more fuel. And that comes in the form of stored glycogen and stored intramuscular triglyceride. So basically, increasing the fuel size of our muscle. This is basically the gas tank, okay? Additionally, strength is a functional adaptation. We lift heavier weights, and we increase our ability to handle heavier loads, and this occurs both via neurological changes and just improving our movement patterns, but also increasing the size of our muscle fibers. Now, that said, just because we get stronger or we get more muscular endurance, it doesn't mean we're training for size. Both of the size gains in either example are just a result or a consequence of training for muscular endurance and strength. Therefore, the typical rep range that we use for hypertrophy of 8 to 12 is the blend of muscular endurance and strength training. And thus it must be the best way to get the biggest, because we're getting a heavy enough weight to increase fiber size and enough volume and a number of reps to increase muscular endurance and increase the fuel cell. And often people will think, okay, if I do 3 sets of 10, I'll get bigger, and if I do 3 sets of 5, I'll get stronger. But we need to stop thinking about it in comparing an equal number of sets. Because really, it's not just about whether I did 10 reps. It's about the total amount of work that determines how much fuel I'm using. So what if we were to compare 3 by 10 versus 5 by 5 with different loads? Would these produce a different amount of hypertrophy? Most would say yes. They'd say, sure, 3 by 10, that's going to be, endurance work enough to increase the fuel cell size, and it's going to be heavy enough to increase fiber size. While 5 by 5, that's not an endurance capacity to it, so it'll only make you bigger through fiber size increases, but it will make you stronger. But let's look at the total amount of volume, meaning sets times reps times load. Either way, it's 3,000 pounds. And it's not like you don't use fuel if you take breaks in the middle of your sets. In fact, even if you're only using creatine phosphate, which is not glycogen or intramuscular triglyceride, when you use it, it has to be replenished by something. And we actually use the other energy systems to replenish our creatine phosphate. So the fuel cell size is also not just associated with how many reps we do, but the total amount of volume. So in fact, I would propose that you would have a very similar amount of hypertrophy from 3 by 10 at 100 pounds that you would with 5 by 5 with 120 pounds. So then what would be the main difference? Are they different? Yes, they are. because you'd be better, and this is going to seem very logical and obvious when you think about it, at doing higher reps when you do 3x10, and you'll be better at doing heavier loads when you do 5x5 with a heavier load. So yes, 3x10 and 100 pounds will produce a little more muscular endurance because you'll be better at buffering fatigue and being able to do an extended set. And 5x5 is going to have you handling a heavier load and will make you stronger. But in terms of hypertrophy, I would propose that they would be very similar. And any differences that exist would probably be minor in the grand scheme of things. That said, we're still studying this, but I have a feeling that when you match volume, and by feeling I mean I think the evidence would suggest that when you match volume, size gains are very similar. So, can we train for size? We can, but not on purpose. Size comes as a consequence of increased muscular endurance and strength and total volume.